Although I had people around me, it still felt very lonely. I had people who cared for me, who were trying to do their very best for me, but it still felt like a very, very lonely time. What made me set up Menopause Support? What was it that inspired me to do it? Well, essentially, it was my passion for not wanting another woman to experience what I experienced. So we're going a few years back now. Back in 2012, I experienced surgical menopause when I had to have a total hysterectomy. And unfortunately for me, I was not given any information about the potential effects of having both of my ovaries removed at the same time and putting me into surgical menopause. I wasn't given any information before I left the hospital, and I was never invited back to the hospital for any follow-up appointments with anyone. The only information I was given as I was leaving the hospital was, go and see your GP in a few weeks' time if you feel you need to. Unfortunately for me, the effects of having my ovaries removed were that it had a really significant effect on my mental health. Probably about 3 months after my surgery. For the first 3 months, I thought I was doing okay. Did have a few hot flushes, but nothing unmanageable. And then at about month 4, I felt as though emotionally and mentally I had fallen off of a cliff. I developed really significant levels of anxiety. I was very tearful a lot of the time. I felt incredibly low. I had completely lost any confidence that I had. And over a period of weeks and months, that translated into me, I had to give up work. I wouldn't leave the house anymore. I didn't want people to come to the house. I wouldn't answer the telephone. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but I wouldn't even open post that was coming to the house, because in what I now know was my irrational state, I thought that all of the news that came into the house was going to be very negative. And eventually it got to a point where my family tried to encourage me to go and see a doctor, but I was terrified because I had no idea that what was going on with me was linked to having my ovaries removed. And so about 8 months after my surgery, I came incredibly close to taking my own life. I was very fortunate. A little dog called Henry saved it. And my husband at that time, when I told him what I'd almost done, he took action. He didn't tell me, but he took action and he contacted a doctor. And a doctor saw me the same day at the practice, and she was lovely and she totally understood, and she talked to me about all of the things, all of the information that I should have had prior to having my surgery. And she said she could do something to help. She wanted to prescribe me hormone replacement therapy, and I did begin hormone replacement therapy, and it wasn't a miracle and it didn't work overnight. It took time to get it right, but I did start to feel as though that there was some hope for the future. And the more I started to feel a little bit better, I started to wonder if I'd been really unfortunate by having this experience, or if there might be other women out there struggling. And so I turned to the internet, as we all do, and started doing some research, and I was absolutely horrified by what I was finding. Just countless numbers of women saying, I feel like I'm going mad, I don't understand what's happening to me, I don't feel like myself anymore, I'm struggling at work, whatever this is having an effect on my relationship. And I just remember saying to my husband, this is ridiculous. We're half of the world population. If I ever feel like me again, I'm going to make damn sure I do something to change this. And ultimately, that's what I've been trying to do for the last 12 years. So we do several different things. Our aim is to ensure that everybody has the right information and support, whether menopause is going to affect them directly, or in fact they're going to be one of the 49% of the population who know somebody who's going to experience menopause. So we want everybody to be informed. We have quite a large online support community group, which supports around 36,000 women currently. We provide one-to-one menopause consultations for individuals. That's a paid service, but we're also fortunately in the position of being able to offer those consultations absolutely free to anyone who's experiencing financial hardship. So it's a 45-minute consultation, importantly to be heard, because for a lot of people, one of the things that they say to us is, I don't feel that I've been heard. And so it's to allow people to be heard, for what they're experiencing to be validated, and then for us to be able to guide them with the information that they need to make the choices that they would like to about how they manage their menopause. And then as part of that consultation, we will also write a letter for them for their GP if they would like us to. We also provide lots and lots of free resources. So we have a free 44-page information booklet called Understanding Menopause. That's currently available in English, Welsh, Polish, Spanish and Urdu. And we're hoping that by this time next year, it will be available in the top 10 languages spoken in the UK other than English. So we're going in the right direction. But we've got many free resources. And essentially, if something is a free resource, people are welcome to share it, download it, print it, and use it without asking. Free means free. We just want people to take them and use them. We also provide training for businesses and organisations. So we provide menopause awareness training for businesses and organisations. That takes lots of different forms. So it might be training for managers, it might be an understanding for the entire workforce, it might be menopause advocate training, it might be looking specifically at menopause and diversity. We have a free email service, so anybody can email us with a question, and we will do our very best either to answer or to point them in the right direction. So the email is hello@menopausesupport.co.uk. And then we also have our podcast. So our podcast is based on a book that I had published last year. The book's called Making Menopause Matter, and the podcast is another free resource. It will be 17 episodes, and each episode is based on one chapter of the book. And in many of the episodes, I speak either to a menopause specialist, or to a specialist in their area of work, or to a woman with lived experience of the subject matter, essentially. So yeah, and obviously we have our Make Menopause Matter campaign. So the campaign is very focused on trying to change the things that many people find difficult about the menopause experience. So many people say they can't get the right help from their GP, they don't get support in the workplace, they don't understand why they were never taught anything about it. So our aims are to have menopause education made mandatory for all GPs, practice nurses and medical students. We have been able to have some influence in ensuring that all medical students do now learn about menopause. That was only from last September though, so we've got a long way to go. We want to ensure that everybody has support in the workplace. That's moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go. And our last aim is to push government, whoever the government are, to fund a public health campaign for menopause, because whether you're going to experience it directly or whether it's something that somebody that you know or love is going to experience it, we all need to have an understanding. So yeah, that's what we do. So I think it's really important that we always remember that whatever type of menopause somebody experiences, so whether it's a premature menopause, an early menopause, a surgical menopause, a medically induced menopause, or what is often called a natural spontaneous menopause, I think it's really important to remember that no two experiences are ever going to be exactly the same. So it's also important to remember that current studies tell us that around 1 in 4 women will experience no symptoms at all. 3 out of 4 will experience symptoms, and 1 in 4 will describe their symptoms as debilitating, so having a really significant effect on their quality of life. So common symptoms, not everybody will have them, but common symptoms are things like hot flushes, night sweats, heart palpitations, achy joints and muscles, things like struggling with memory and concentration, anxiety, low mood, mood going up and down. Some people will talk about things like having very itchy skin or feeling that their skin has gone very dry. Maybe changes to their hair, where their hair is thinning and drying. Dry eyes, dry mouth, and then the symptoms that doctors call the genitourinary symptoms. So these are things like vulval and vaginal symptoms, dryness, soreness, irritation, and urinary symptoms, things like increased frequency, urgency, or perhaps urinary tract infections. So they're some of the more common things that people may experience, but I would say that over the last 10 years, it has become really clear to us at Menopause Support that for many people, their first symptoms are related to mood. So they are things like anxiety or low mood, and then people not necessarily knowing that they can be related to menopause, and perhaps it's not until a few years on when they're able to look back and think, oh, actually that was the beginning of perimenopause for me. Yes, there are lots of myths and misconceptions. Menopause is not just hot flushes and night sweats. As we've just explained, there are lots of potential symptoms, and not everybody who experiences menopause will experience hot flushes or night sweats. I think another one is, I think there is a general perception that menopause happens to women in their 50s. Actually, perimenopause for most people will begin in their late 30s, early 40s. I think many people are unaware that menopause can be early. So currently, 1 in 100 women in the UK under the age of 40, 1 in 1,000 under 30, and 1 in 10,000 under 20 will experience a premature menopause. So the youngest woman that I've counselled through that process is 17. Now that's unusual, but 1 in 100 under 40, when you think of the size of the UK population, that's not going to be that unusual. So I think that's important. I think some of the things that we have heard is that, and again, misconceptions from from healthcare professionals has been, well, it can't be menopause because you're too young. And it's not to say that every health condition or every symptom that somebody is experiencing is necessarily related to menopause. But if it's a new onset of symptoms and you are late 30s, early 40s, yes, it absolutely could be related to menopause. And if you're very much younger and there's been a change to your periods and you're suddenly experiencing symptoms that you hadn't experienced before, it should at least be investigated. Some of the symptoms are around treatment. We often hear that if people are prescribed hormone replacement therapy, that their healthcare professional tells them that they're only allowed to have it for a limited amount of time. So they'll often say, well, you can only have it for 5 years. National NICE guidance tells us very clearly that there is no arbitrary time limit for how long somebody can use it, as long as it is clinically correct for them in terms of their medical health. Those genitourinary symptoms that I talked about, there are treatments called local, vaginal or topical estrogens for those treatments. We often hear from women who say they're on HRT to help with their symptoms. They would like to have topical estrogen to help with those genitourinary symptoms, but their healthcare professional has told them they can't have both. That's absolutely incorrect. Yeah, there's lots of myths and misunderstanding around menopause, and one of the things that we've done in the 44-page information booklet I was telling you about is we've tried to myth bust a lot of those myths. There's lots of misinformation, but hopefully with some of the resources that are out there now, we can help to, give people the right factual information. Well, you are perfectly entitled to ask to see a different GP. I would always ask if there is a GP or practice nurse, because it's often the practice nurse that's done the menopause training. Is there a GP or a practice nurse in your surgery who has a special interest in menopause? So we always advise that to people. I would download either the Understanding Menopause booklet or just our menopause symptom checker, and I would complete that. I would advise reading the Understanding Menopause booklet so that you feel well informed, and then I would go back and seek either a second consultation with the original GP where you feel more informed, or I would ask to see somebody. If there is someone who specialises in the practice, I would ask to see them. If you still don't get the right help and support, you can ask to be referred to an NHS menopause specialist clinic. The problem is that they're like every other part of the NHS. There are long waiting lists. If you're not getting the right help and support at your GP practice, I would also suggest that you have contact with the practice manager and you raise an education issue with the practice manager. Because when you raise an education issue, as a practice, they should look to change that. They should look to improve the education. So it won't help you directly in that moment, but you might help every other woman that comes after you. And then, of course, the other thing that you can do is you can always get in touch with us. We will happily signpost you to some other resources that you can perhaps use. You are, of course, welcome to book a one-to-one. If you're in a position where you don't have the financial resources to do that, we'll provide that free of charge for you, and we will write an advocacy letter to your GP for you to try and help you get the right support. So there are avenues you can go down. You can, of course, also contact your local health watch. So whether you're watching in Manchester or you're watching somewhere else around the country, you can also contact Health Watch for advocacy in terms of not being able to get the right help and support. Whether you're a woman who's going to experience menopause, or whether you are somebody who's going to be in a supporting role, whether you're a partner, a friend, a family member, a colleague, a line manager, do some homework, get educated. And for women particularly, I would advise learning something about menopause before it comes along. So I would suggest every woman, maybe in her 20s or her 30s, because you never know when it's going to happen for you. Obviously, that doesn't take account of the people that it happens to much earlier. But I would say even in your 20s, menopause is part of the female life cycle. So we hear quite a lot about periods and pregnancy. We hear very little about menopause and postmenopause. I would suggest finding, and it doesn't mean that you have to go and buy something, it doesn't mean you have to part with any cash, but there are lots of good free resources out there now. I would find one of those free resources. Of course, I would point you to our Understanding Menopause booklet, and you don't have to be an expert, but it is really important for you to know, when might this happen? What potentially could the symptoms be? If I have symptoms, what are my options in terms of managing those symptoms, if that's what I would like to do? What are the potential long-term health implications? How, during that time in my life, can I optimize my health and well-being? What can I do in terms of my nutrition, my movement, my sleep, managing my stress levels? They all sound really easy, but actually, once you're experiencing menopause, it's harder to focus on those things. So I think it's all about, we often hear the trope, don't we? Knowledge is power. And it absolutely, knowledge is so key when it comes to not just menopause, but all aspects of our health. But when it comes to menopause, I think there is still very much a feeling that, it doesn't happen until you're in your 50s. And as I say, for many people, it begins at least a decade before. It begins in your 40s. If you know what the symptoms are, you can recognise them. If you know what you would like to do to be able to help manage those symptoms, you can take action. And then people can think, okay, this has been my menopause experience. Hopefully, most women will live 20, 30, 40 years post-menopausally. So once menstruation ceases for good, most people will live many years. And I think it's really important that we are well prepared to make the very best of the years post-menopause, because there is an awful lot of life to be lived. So you can find the website, which is menopausesupport.co.uk. The email address is hello@menopausesupport.co.uk. We have a public Facebook page, which is, I think it's definitely Menopause Support, but I can't remember if there's anything else around it. We have a public Instagram page, which is called The Menopause Support. And we have our private online group, which is also hosted on Facebook, and that's called The Menopause Support Network. And then, of course, we have our Make Menopause Matter campaign, which you can find via the website.